So the next speaker, now we go from between populations and country models to within host models. Helene Cecilia, she's a PhD student at Nantes. She will present which livestock species contributes most to the Rift Valley fever virus transmission, looking at the within host model approach. All yours, Helene.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Can you see everything?
Yes, we can. Very good.
Thank you very much. Okay. So yeah, today, I will be changing the scales, the scale compared to the previous presentations. And I will be talking about how we explored the transmission potential of the different livestock host species of Rift Valley fever. So this was done in collaboration with Wageningen University, in particular with Quirin ten Bosch, who works in the team of Mart de Jong. So if you haven't heard of Rift Valley fever virus, it's a vector-borne and zoonotic virus. It's present, as you can see on the map, in most of the African continent, but also in the West Indian Ocean Islands and in the Arabian Peninsula. It affects sheep, goats, and cattle, creating storms of abortion, and it also affects humans either by contact with infected tissue of animals, but also through vectorial transmission. And in terms of vectorial transmission, two main mosquito genera are involved in Rift Valley fever transmission, and these are Aedes and Culex mosquitoes. So at the population level, it's already been more or less shown that, of course, vector feeding preferences and the relative densities of livestock species within the herds will influence species contribution to transmission. But we lack knowledge on potential difference at the individual level in terms of infectiousness. So that's what we wanted to investigate in this study. So know whether some livestock species are more infectious than others. And to do that, we explored their viral load dynamics and see how this was associated with probabilities to infect mosquitoes. So we had access to a really nice data set from a published study on ongoing development of a vaccine for Rift Valley fever. So we had daily measures of viremia taken from young sheep, goats, and cattle. And we had two types of viremia measures, so total viral loads measured by RT-qPCR and infectious titers measured by TCID50. So the goal was to develop a within-host model to fit to this data, and we used Metropolis Hastings MCMC algorithm. So this is the within-host model we developed. So it's quite simply representing the change of health state of the target cells of the host, which are susceptible. And then when they get infected by an infectious virus, they go through an eclipse phase. So the virus has entered the cell, but the cell is not producing new virus yet. And then the cell becomes productively infected. And by then, it's producing two types of viral particles, the infectious ones, which can infect new cells, and the non-infectious ones. And so as you can guess from the two types of data I presented just before, we will fit the TCID50 measures, so the infectious titers, to the infectious virus in our model, and the RT-qPCR will be fitted to the total viral projection. So the infectious virus have the possibility to lose their infectivity and become non-infectious. And the two types of viral particles are cleared from the system by the host at a common rate. So this is the model fit we obtain. So you can see the three livestock species I mentioned before. And you can also see that for lambs, we had two types of individuals, so those who survived the infection and those who died or were euthanized during the process. So these two groups actually differ significantly. As you can see here, the viremia of the sheep who died peaked a bit higher than the sheep who survived. and tended to be eliminated a bit slower. So here you can see the dynamics stopping at time step 7, but the individuals actually died from day 3 to day 7, so you don't have the same number of individuals at each time step here. And so this will be taken into account with a survival model later on. So this is the difference we see in the survival outcome between individuals. And when we compare surviving individuals between species, because cows and goats all survived the infection, we also see significant differences. So you can see that, so I'm talking mainly of the infectious titers in blue here. So for goats, the viremia peaks sooner than the other species, but at a lower level. And for lambs, it peaks higher and the infection tends to last a bit longer. So once we've seen that, we can also try to quantify this difference by looking at some outcome measures. So basically, instead of focusing on the value of the individual parameters of the model, have some kind of summary metrics that we can interpret a bit more easily. So we use the basic reproduction number, R0, which here must be understood in the context of the within-host scale. So it's the number of cells each infected cell will infect in an entirely susceptible population. We also looked at the generation time, which is the time between the infection of a cell and the infection of a secondary cell. And then when you have those two, you can have the growth rate. So here you can see that our 4 groups differ in growth rate. So all these metrics actually characterize really the start of the replication of the virus. So the lamb who died from the infection have a higher growth rate than the others. And also the surviving lambs are quite different from cows and goats. So a difference in growth rate could be either explained by a higher R0 or shorter generation time. And here you can see that it's the first option that we see. So the R0 for the dying lambs is almost twice as high as the R0 for the other groups. Even though the generation time tends to be a bit longer. So it's representative of a kind of trade-off. It's difficult for a virus to have both a high R0 and a short generation time. So once we characterize well these differences in viral dynamics, we want to go one step further and know how this influences onward transmission. So we need to involve the vector component into our study. So we did this by performing a literature review to gather all the experimental data that would allow us to characterize the dose response curve that exists between the infectious titer of the host and the probability to infect a mosquito that would come and bite this host. So we constrained our data set to experiments performed on hamsters with one particular strain of Rift Valley fever. And we fitted different curves for Aedes and Culex genera mosquitoes. So these comprise several species of mosquito. And we found that they're actually quite different. So for instance, at 5 log10 TCID50, which basically all our animals reach during their infection, we have a 11% probability to pass the virus to a Culex mosquito and a 25% probability to infect an Aedes mosquito. So now that we've got these two components, so viral loads over time and probability to infect a mosquito in relation with infectious titer, we can combine these two and have what we will call the net infectiousness. So basically, if you combine these two to have the probability to infect a mosquito over time, and you take the area under the curve you get, you will have the average number of mosquito a host will infect during its infectious period. So this is what we get here. So you see that the differences between the species can be seen here, and they differ depending on the vector involved in the transmission. So for LAMPs, as we saw earlier, so the individuals have quite different viral dynamics depending on whether they survive or die. So we take that into account into the computation of our net infectiousness by drawing the probability to die and then drawing a time of death depending on what was observed in the samples we had. And we submit this to a kind of sensitivity analysis by varying the survival rate in the LAMPs. So in the original data set, we had 10 LAMPs out of 16 who died. And here you can see, so at the top, they all survive, and at the bottom, they all die. So you can see actually that the LAMPs who die from the infection are actually more infectious than the surviving ones. So this is quite interesting because despite their reduced lifespan, they could potentially infect more mosquitoes on average. And you can also see the difference between the Aedes and the Culex vectors. So to sum up, we've seen that the LAMPs have the highest net infectiousness to mosquitoes. So that was not estimated this way before with this kind of modeling. So this is due to higher peak viremia and a longer infection than other livestock species. We saw that the LAMPs dying from Rift Valley fever were more infectious than those less severely affected. And for similar infectious titers, there's a higher probability to pass the virus onto Aedes than to Culex mosquitoes. So this needs to be investigated further because we limited ourselves to data on infection rates. So this is the fact to detect the virus in the body of the mosquitoes. If we want to know whether there's the difference between Aedes and Culex in their capability to become transmissive themselves, we need to look at the virus in the saliva of the mosquitoes. But the systematic review didn't allow us to do a dose response curve for this step. So obviously, the main perspective is to know how these results at the individual level will impact the transmission of Rift Valley fever at the population level. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a really interesting talk. While the questions are still coming, may I start with the first one? I was wondering, your model, your within-host model, is that actually generic? Can that be used, I think, for any viral infection?
Yeah, it's a quite common model. So I just showed the graphical representation, but you can see the equations here. So yeah, it's well, I took a lot of inspiration on the work done on influenza, for instance. There are a lot of within-host models for influenza. So it was quite helpful to know what kind of hypothesis to include or not, this kind of thing. So just to sum up quickly, it's called the target cell limited model because the susceptible target cells only get depleted. So this is because we're dealing with an acute infection, which is quite fast. And also it's a way to take into account the susceptibility of cells that might decrease over time. And implicitly, it's assuming that the immune response might act on this susceptibility, even though we don't include explicitly the immune response in any of the compartments. But yeah, so the within-host model usually have only one type of viral load measures, so either TCID50 or RNA measures. So we had the chance to have these two measures and also be able to see a bit the difference between the total viral loads and the subpart that is really infectious.
Okay, great, thanks. And the second question again is related. I had a second, and it's related to Laetitia. So let me just kickstart it off. So the two data sets you had, so you used two data sets. One is to calibrate your within-host model, and the second data set was for the probability for infecting a mosquito. Were they both experimental data, or so what kind of data were these?
Yeah, sure. So they were both experimental indeed. So the first one comes from this publication. So actually, we took the control group of the vaccination trial, so the animals that were not vaccinated, and then submitted to a challenge infection. So we had the viral loads of these animals. So basically, between I think it's more or less six to 10 individuals per livestock species here. And for the systematic review here, it's of course experimental data as well. So mainly what we call competence studies, so which aim to assess the competence of vectors, so their ability to transmit the virus. So they basically make some different species of mosquitoes feed on these hamsters and then dissect them to see if the virus was in their body, their wings, or their saliva.
Okay, so there's a potential question whether the different species that varies, because that was based on hamster studies, right? Experimental studies, and there's nothing known about the other livestock species, I guess.
Well, I'm not an expert, but I think hamsters are considered as a good model host for these mosquito feeding experiments. And well, the infectious titer is quite independent of the host, like it's a quantity. So we assume that the dose response would be the same with other animals.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks. Elisabetta has a question. You want to ask that directly?
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much, Helen. I'm not sure I understood. So when you analyze the data, did you account for any individual effect through an approach like mixed effect models or something, or?
No. We just
okay.
So we had quite a lot of difficulty to make the MCMC work because of there were a lot of correlation between the parameters of the model. So we had to figure out which one to fix and which one to estimate, and then to have enough data to have something relevant to say, we had to keep the livestock species as a group, and we didn't try to fit parameters to individuals within these groups.
Yeah, it's not necessarily about fitting to individuals, but considering an individual effect on parameters. And sometimes it could help to estimate, in fact, instead of considering everything as a whole. The parameter, in your case, if I all understood, parameters are common to all individuals. I mean, it's the same value, they're assumed. Or another way to imagine it would be to account, to say that there is a common effect, a population effect, and also an individual effect. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not, I mean, it's not an obligation. It's just sometimes it has a sense to do it because we think that it might be an individual effect on something on infectiousness, or for instance, a randomness effect, or sometimes it's also because it can help, as I said, to improve the inference. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
There was no other question, but I have a burning question. So you mentioned, so you presented your within-host model to ask the question, which livestock species contributes most to the transmission of the virus? And then at the end, you concluded, well, you need to go to a between-host transmission model. Do you think the answer you may get a different answer, and why? Yeah, what depends on that? What would shape the answer here?
Yeah, well, I'm actually a bit unsure of what would be the impact at the population level, because so in the first chapter of my PhD, I focused on the risk of epidemic of Rift Valley fever in Senegal, for instance. And what we found at the population level is that since the cattle seem to be a preferential target for vectors, and they tend to be in smaller numbers than small ruminants in the herds, they tend to concentrate quite a lot of the biting pressure. So we found that they could have a prominent role in the transmission of Rift Valley fever. But now that we've seen that it could be maybe counterbalanced in some way by the infectiousness of the lambs, I'm curious to see how this will plays out in the end. So we plan to include it in a meta-population model in Senegal again, taking into account the mobility of the animal through the nomadic herds.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, let me know what you find out. That's really interesting. There are no further questions, so I let you go and we move on to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.